Today we start a series of reflections with the background of the shadow pandemic. We're in Psalm 139, 6 sessions between now and the end of the summer term. Today we're in the first 4 verses. Let's focus on them for a moment. O Lord, you examine me and know me. You know me when I sit down and when I get up. Even from far away, you understand my motives. You carefully observe me when I travel or when I lie down to rest. You're aware of everything I do. Certainly, my tongue does not frame a word without you, O Lord, being thoroughly aware of it. Last Monday, I asked Renewed to take a look at this. Coming at it without warning, like you may be this morning, people were a bit unsure about being so totally known. After a while, it led to thoughts that it was a good job that God could be trusted with all that he knows. I don't think it was credit card details people were concerned about. It brought to mind CCTV and facial recognition and how creepy that seemed. It was reassuring on one hand that God was watching over us, but on the other, at least one person was uncertain that every thought, including what you avoid saying out loud, is known to God. They also commented on the detail that the writer goes into. Let's look at some of the words he uses. I'll jot some things down and hopefully you'll be able to see that as well. The writer talks about us being examined and being understood. Talks about being known and being observed. That's an interesting one in in Hebrew. Apparently, it's one of those really wide-ranging words. It can mean sift, it can mean measured, and all stations in between. Probably the closest thing is to talk of analysis, but when you talk about analysis, you think of a laboratory more than a farm or a kitchen. But it's certainly got the idea of being measured within it. Then there's being aware as well. And God does all of this carefully, and he does it thoroughly. He's not like me. He doesn't jump to conclusions about himself. He doesn't jump to conclusions about me. Of course, examining, knowing, analysing could be critical, like an interrogator. Negative, if you like. It could be dispassionate as well, detached, like a surgeon or an examiner. But that's not the way God is. His analysis, his knowing of us is appreciative. It's deep and it's understanding. He knows how we are made. He remembers that we're made of dust. The material isn't that great. That's in Psalm 103. And in the psalm before this one, that's Psalm 138, of course, he places his knowledge, the psalmist places his knowledge in the context of God's unfailing love and faithfulness. Okay, so we've got some words about God's intensive understanding of us, his macro lens, his focus group. The focus group also commented on God's extensive knowledge of us, his wide-angle view. When I sit down and when I get up. And then Later on, he repeats the thought in a different form, the other way round. When I travel and when I lie down. It's that crossover thing you get in Hebrew poetry rather than rhymes. You do get the impression that this guy is a bit tired. He has to get up, but he likes to sit down. He has to travel, but he likes to lie down too. It's a wonder he doesn't actually mention having a cup of tea and a biscuit. We're never out of God's range. He doesn't lose sight of us. It says, even from far away. Somebody mentioned about flight radar 24/7, where you can track the flight path of a plane that's carrying somebody you love coming back home. But even that loses people sometimes. I was tracking Susie and the kids, and Sid the dog as well, on their way back from Thailand a few years ago. It was all great until their flight disappeared over Afghanistan. I decided to switch it off then for a while, and sure enough, pick them up again later. But God does so much better than radar. He doesn't lose us. We don't fly below his view. But a couple more insights. Some social scientists came up with a grid that has stood the test of time and focuses on how our self-knowledge is limited. They looked at the self, the me as I know me and you know me, known by the self and others. They looked at it from 4 angles. They weren't particularly inventive. It looked like a window. Their names were Joe and Harry, and they called it the Johari window. That name's stuck, and you could look it up on the internet. There are loads and loads of references to it. So anyway, there's me. Okay, and these 2 panes show what I know about myself. So here's the self, and this is what I know. Here is you looking in to me, and here's what you know. This area is what's open. It's public. It's where we make relationships. Now, there's a bit here of me as well that you don't know. It's hidden. It may be unintentional. It may be on purpose. But that sphere, that pane, if you like, is where we do performances. It can't be where we have relationships. Now, here's what's interesting. Over on the other side, there's an area that's not known to me. But it is known to you. It's what we call our blind spot. It's that blind area. Do you know what your blind spots are? I wouldn't spend too much time thinking about them because that's where madness lies. People who love us sometimes point out our blind spots, but thankfully, often they just let us carry on in blissful ignorance, and we're happy for that. But then there's this other area that probably is proportionately much bigger than this, and it's the area that is unknown to me about me, and it's unknown to you about me. It's the vast amount of stuff about our thoughts and motivations, our conditioning, our secret sins, our private aspirations, things that we don't know about ourselves that make us what we are. Verse 4, certainly my tongue does not frame a word without you, O Lord, being thoroughly aware of it. Even when we're trying to get a thought off the tip of our tongue, God is there first. I'll leave you to pick out your takeaways, but I do have a final thought. For me, the kicker in this passage is not so much that God knows me, because I've been brought up on that, and often I have to say it seemed more like a threat than a comfort. But the genuinely awesome thing is that God knows everybody in the same kind of thorough detail. You'll know that there are thousands of graves across the world that contain the bodies, the remains of soldiers, people who died in wars. And over each of these graves is a stone. And instead of the name is carved the words, known unto God. That's an amazing truth, that every person in every place, in every time, is known to God, just like he knows you and me. From the unnamed victims of genocide to the hundreds that will never be known, that archaeologists have been digging up in the historic cemeteries that are blocking the route of HS2, people are known by God. And when they lift the skulls and the skeletons out, God can recognise them. He has understood and observed them. From each COVID victim washed up in the last couple of weeks on the shores of the Ganges, to the toddler whose prehistoric skeleton is on show at Avebury, they're known to God thoroughly and carefully. From the wickedest person alive to the saints in glory, God is aware of each one. Not only is he aware, but he knows and examines. He thoroughly understands and carefully observes. And somewhere in that teeming crowd, that multitude too great to count, God sees and keeps track of you and of me. That's awesome. It makes me feel very small, but it makes me feel infinitely valued as well.